An intern could do this job. That's what Bradley, my new department head, said out loud in front of my team at our Houston headquarters. Bradley, a man with the emotional depth of a dried-up ballpoint pen, dismissed 20 years of my work in one sentence. 2 decades of 6:00 a.m. logins, missed Christmas mornings, and staying in the office through power outages and hurricane warnings, all reduced to a throwaway insult. And this gel-haired wonder compared me to someone whose biggest decision last week was whether to microwave mac and cheese with or without the lid. The conference room went still. You could hear Tina's acrylic nails tapping against her coffee mug. Robert from accounting stared like he'd just witnessed a car crash. I didn't argue. I just stood, slid my badge across the table, and walked out. My chair screeched against the tile like it was offended for me. No tears. No yelling. Just that heavy calm you feel before a storm rolls in. And before we go further, 96% of you watching haven't subscribed. If watching corporate train wrecks is your thing, hit that button. It keeps this channel alive and our coffee pot full. Now back to the disaster. The worst part wasn't the public humiliation, it was the satisfaction in Bradley's eyes. He looked like he'd just cleared a final obstacle. Then he turned to the intern beside him, Samantha, barely 23, and said, "Let's get you trained on Danielle's workflows. Should be quick." Poor Samantha looked ready to cry. She'd shadowed me for 2 days and still couldn't identify which secure terminal connected to the compliance archive. Not her fault, I'd built most of it myself during the vendor collapse of 2015. None of it was documented anywhere but my personal offline logs. The system was like a stubborn old pickup, it only started for me. Bradley didn't know that. He didn't ask. He was the kind who tossed buzzwords into PowerPoints and thought deleting old code meant deleting the people who maintained it. I was legacy. By the time I reached the parking lot, my phone lit up 6 unread group messages. Robert. What the hell just happened? Tina, are we screwed? Samantha. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I shut my phone off, got into my 2006 Ford Escape, and just sat there, hands at 10 and 2. Not moving, not crying, just still. That system had outlived 5 department heads, 3 CTOs, and 1 office goldfish. When the vendor bailed 7 years ago and the CTO nearly passed out, I was the one who rewrote the compliance patch. I stayed until 3:00 a.m. to keep us aligned with federal protocols. Even the CEO called me privately to ask, "Can you hold it together until we find a permanent fix?" I did quietly, like duct tape on a dam. And now Bradley had just peeled the duct tape off, certain nothing would leak. I drove home with the windows down, Houston's skyline shrinking in my rearview mirror. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew one thing: the truth would hit them soon. Because while Bradley handed my duties to someone who still kept passwords on sticky notes, a countdown had already started. Once it hit 0, no intern with a Slack login and a spreadsheet would keep $240 million in federal contracts from vanishing. I didn't bother with music, just the hum of the road and the wheeze of my AC vents. I'd been nursing that Frankenstein system since George W. Bush was in office. Nobody wanted it. Nobody understood it. But it kept the lights on, kept the audits clean, kept the government happy. When I inherited it in 2010, it was half-corrupted spaghetti code sitting on a dusty server in a closet that smelled like old ramen. They told me, "Don't waste time learning it. We're replacing it soon." 12 years later, it was still there, and it only worked because I knew which error messages were harmless ghosts and which ones were actual fires. Bradley thought my work was repetitive. Sure, just like running a nuclear reactor looks like pressing buttons. Until someone pressed the wrong one. I pulled into my driveway just as the sun dipped behind the cul-de-sac. My neighbor was mowing his lawn like the world hadn't just tipped sideways. I lifted a half-hearted wave. He waved back, oblivious. Inside, I kicked off my shoes and opened my laptop, not the work-issued brick I'd left behind, but my personal machine. My real terminal. The one holding copies of everything I wasn't supposed to take home. I'd learned long ago too many unexpected layoffs end with a 200 a.m. call from a panicked ex-boss begging for a fix no one else knows how to make. I started my ritual backing up personal logs, exporting compliance certificate renewals, printing my access history from the vault, screenshotting the last admin token revocation request. Click, drag, encrypt, repeat. This wasn't vengeance. Not yet. This was preparation. Like a soldier cleaning her rifle after discharge might never fire it again, but it would gleam when needed. That system. It only ran because I knew where it would break. I didn't just maintain it. I understood its moods, which errors were real, which were ghosts from long-dead modules. It spoke in corrupted logs and timing quirks. Ugly, ungrateful, but mine. At 9:17 p.m., my phone lit up unknown number but the Houston corporate area code. I let it ring out. Seconds later, a voicemail. I hit play on speaker while pouring a bourbon. "Hi, Danielle. This is Claire. I'm calling on behalf of Mr. Howard. He asked me to check in about an unexpected departure earlier today. He wasn't informed beforehand. Could you give him a call back?" The tone was polite. The undertone said we might have just made a very expensive mistake. I set the phone down untouched. Unexpected cute. I sipped, letting the oak burns sink in. My admin tokens would time out in exactly 36 hours, triggering the uncustodied state, a protocol I'd written in 2019 after a near disaster. It would reject key sync requests, red flag the compliance log, suspend the audit trail. Once that happened, the feds would step in. Because without a custodian, every single government transaction became suspect. They hadn't just fired the admin, they'd fired the signature. I leaned back, bourbon in hand, while my backup drive hummed its quiet goodbye. The wheel was turning. Nothing could stop it. Monday morning, Bradley strutted in like he'd just been knighted. Fresh haircut, too much cologne, acting as if firing me had purified the department. "All right, team," he said, clapping in the break room like a substitute teacher. "Samantha and Jonah will split Danielle's workflows. Just routine admin stuff." Jenna nearly choked on her oatmeal. Jonah, our junior engineer who still called PowerShell that black box thing, went pale. He typed "legacy compliance Danielle doc site" into his browser. Nothing. Because no public site existed. It wasn't meant to be public. Samantha hunched over her borrowed workstation, clicking through an unfamiliar GUI. There's an error. Vault 41 token expired, custodian undefined, and now it's frozen. If you've been holding your breath through this ride, make sure you hit that subscribe button. The next chapter takes this storm to a place they never saw coming. Bradley didn't flinch. Just legacy noise. Keep going. Legacy noise. That's what he called the software I'd resurrected from vendor scraps and undocumented scripts. Like it was some dusty fax machine humming in the corner. Thing is that noise had teeth. Vault 41 didn't crash, it locked. That message only appeared when the admin token signature went unmatched during an audit sync. And it only happened when someone like me revoked her credentials manually, which I had done at 8:43 a.m. Sunday. From my secure offline console, I clicked the big red Revoke Admin Token button. A warning popped up. Removing custodian token will initiate compliance audit lockdown within 36 hours if no replacement is assigned and verified. I clicked yes. The screen flashed, then went black. The silent kill switch was live. It would let you poke around. But deep inside, the compliance verification thread had entered a loop, a silent countdown ticking away. Jonah, our junior engineer, was already on Google searching custodian undefined. I pictured him on Reddit by lunch posting help compliance software throwing weird errors, boss says ignore. Should I worry? Oh, Jonah. Bradley called a 2:00 p.m. progress check meeting. He sat at the head of the table grinning like a man who thought pivot tables were foreplay. So he said, "Smooth sailing. Samantha lifted her notepad blank except for a sticky note reading, "Ask about 3FA token" with 3 underlines. She looked 5 years older than she had at breakfast. "I can't get into the vault," she admitted quietly. "Did you submit the role reassignment through Access Point?" Bradley asked. "Yes, but it says my role lacks historical signature parity." She blinked. "I don't even know what that means." Bradley rolled his eyes so hard I worried he'd sprain something. God, Danielle really overcomplicated everything. "We'll escalate to IT." "Shouldn't legal be notified?" Jenna asked softly. Bradley laughed. "Legal doesn't need to know about error messages." He was wrong. So wrong. Vault 41 didn't care about titles or buzzwords. It cared about one thing: that the signature tied to the federal compliance logs matched the one on file in DC, and that signature mine. No signature, no verification. No verification, no compliance. No compliance, no contracts. While Bradley passed blame like stale donuts, I was at home on my back porch sipping tea as the sun set. Inside, my personal console pinged, "Custodian status revoked." "Countdown to lockdown, 33H 12 Milam 007s. Let them keep pushing buttons." The shell looked fine, but it was hollow seconds from collapse. The first ripple hit at 7:42 a.m. Tuesday. Mark, our normally unshakable CTO, the kind of guy who spoke in acronyms and kept stress balls shaped like servers, got an automated alert: sync anomaly detected. Audit logs not verified with central registry for 23 hours. To most people, tech fluff. To us, it was the check engine light flashing while the hood was on fire. "You didn't circle back to this. You stopped everything and prayed the next email wasn't from the feds." Mark scrolled, blinked twice, and clicked through the error tree. The source: Vault 41. My system. The log stopped syncing the minute my token was revoked. The trace report showed the same line repeating: "Custodian not verified. Signature rejected." Then the kicker: my name on every active filing digital signature time-stamped on the last verified compliance upload. No replacement custodian. No approved transition. Nothing. Meanwhile, in legal, Claire. Yes, the same Claire who'd called me on Howard's behalf sipped her espresso while scanning the automated compliance digest. She frowned, scrolling to Form 722B, quarterly custodial chain confirmation. Filed under Danielle Cruz. Next due today. Backup custodian none. Risk flag high. Her spoon clinked against the porcelain. She picked up the phone. "Bradley," she said evenly, "has Danielle's custodial handover been finalized?" He slurped his coffee. "Oh, that. Yeah, Samantha's picking it up. Danielle's stuff was just old admin procedures. You assigned Samantha." "Yes. Don't worry, we're modernizing. Big simplification plan next quarter." "That's not what I asked. I've got it under control." 6 minutes later, Mark stormed into Bradley's office, laptop open to the audit trace. "Tell me you've logged Danielle's handover with the registry." Bradley waved him off. "It's just being dramatic." Mark pointed at the screen. "We're not syncing. The federal system rejected our last 3 uploads. If this keeps up, they'll shut us down under Section 932. Calm down. I'll have Samantha fix the API keys." "This has nothing to do with API keys," Mark said, voice sharp. "This is about federal authorization. You fired the only person legally cleared to touch that system." Bradley looked like a man trying to bluff his way through poker, but realizing he'd left his poker face at home. She was a mid-tier admin. Anyone can do that job. Mark didn't blink. Then explained to legal why her name is still on every active record. Silence. Across town, I sat at my kitchen table in sweatpants, eating dry cereal from the box, watching the loading spinner on my laptop. Almost poetic. I opened a draft email. The recipient field was already filled in: shtorasagov Henry Torras, my contact at the Federal Oversight Office. We'd worked together for years. He once mailed me a novelty squirrel figurine carrying a briefcase after I caught a reporting error before his office did. That's how close we were. I typed one sentence. For our custodial protocol, please see the attached transition void for your records. Attached a PDF confirming the custodian role had been vacated due to my termination with no assigned replacement. Time-stamped, digitally signed, irrevocable. I hit send. No threats, no drama, just one trigger, a bullet in the chamber. Back at HQ, Legal and Compliance did what lawyers and risk officers do best: panic behind closed doors while pretending everything was fine. Warning flags were piling up: failed syncs, rejected timestamps, a dead custodian field. No fail-safe override. Bradley still sipped his coffee blissfully, unaware his empire was built on quicksand. By nightfall, Henry's office had read my email. No response, and I didn't need one. The system was counting down. Soon, it would stop. By Wednesday morning, the building didn't hum. It creaked like the walls had developed a nervous tic. People walked faster, spoke quieter. Phones rang longer before anyone picked up. The system wasn't down yet, but its whispers were loud enough for even the oblivious to hear. First came the invoice failures. Procurement tried to process a routine bulk renewal for secure transport services, federally certified quarterly. The system flagged it: unauthorized custodian signature null. 3 attempts later, the ledger locked it into review: $1.4 million frozen in digital limbo. Then the emails arrived. From the Department of Energy's vendor oversight team, please confirm current compliance officer on file. Recent logs show unsigned transfers. From the Office of Logistics Management, we cannot verify authenticity of your Q3 filing. Has your point of contact changed? Legal grew jumpy. Finance started twitching. Samantha, the intern turned sacrificial lamb, was now working 12-hour days, drowning in systems she hadn't known existed last week. Bradley, meanwhile, put on his executive calm voice, telling everyone it was just residual noise from deprecated legacy integrations. He repeated the phrase in every meeting like it was a mantra. When the CTO flagged failed integrity checks on archived data bundles, Bradley said, "We're modernizing. Glitches are normal." When legal warned that unsigned audits could trigger a mandatory federal investigation, he waved a hand. "I've got calls scheduled." The calls didn't help. No one, not Samantha, not Jonah, not IT, had access to the compliance core. Vault 41 was sealed. The system had entered defensive posture. The red tape tightened with every failed brute force attempt. I didn't hear this firsthand. I didn't have to. Greg from finance texted me around noon. Not to pry, but did Bradley mess something up? People are freaking out. Jenna messaged me on Signal hours later. "Danielle, your system won't open for anyone. He says you left it oversecured." That doesn't sound right. Did you do something? No, Jenna. I didn't do something. I did everything. I followed protocol. I played by the rules. I just knew the rules better than the fools trying to replace me. From my couch wrapped in the blanket I crocheted during the pandemic, I scrolled through the slow-motion unraveling like it was a soap opera I'd already seen, still satisfying the second time. This wasn't vengeance. It was peace. The kind of peace you get when your truth doesn't need defending. I sipped tea while the world I'd held together with zip ties and grit started to wobble without me. The system was old, fragile, not because it was weak, but because it had been running for years on institutional memory and sheer willpower. My memory. My willpower. Bradley never asked what I actually did. Never wondered why a so-called mid-tier admin was CC'd on memos between legal and compliance, or why my clearance levels were 3 tiers above his, why the system only behaved when I was around. Now even the building seemed to notice something was wrong. The elevator sighed, printers blinked out SOS patterns, and the air smelled faintly of ozone and bad decisions. The shutdown hadn't arrived, but it was close enough that the floor felt it. Like the first gust before a hurricane, whispers curled through the cracks, papers, shifted eyes pretended not to look at the sky. At 7:46 p.m., Bradley's work phone rang. He was halfway through a mediocre pad thai lounging in socks and a grind-mode t-shirt watching a startup pitch show he didn't understand. The ringtone startled him. Procurement. Bradley here. Why are all our federal transactions frozen? Marion from procurement snapped, skipping pleasantries. 5 flagged orders, all government-facing, stuck in authorization review. Logs haven't updated since Monday morning. That doesn't make sense, he said. We submitted the logs. IT must. It's not IT, she cut in. Vault 41 is rejecting every input. Audit trails are inaccessible. Probably a permissions issue, he muttered, already logging into the compliance console on his work laptop. Access denied. Authority token invalid. Error code, signature chain, mismatch. He tried again. Same result. His director access wasn't enough to breach the custodian gate tied to one very specific set of credentials. Mine. Digging through the transition folder he'd told Samantha to sort later, he found mostly empty files and a spreadsheet labeled Danielle Transition Tasks. 4 cells filled. One big red comment: vault access not delegated. He called IT, emergency access to Vault 41, Night Tech. Julio sighed. We've been trying since Monday. Backup tokens aren't recognized. What about system override? She disabled that 2 years ago. Legal signed off after the vendor patch. Only one custodian slot now. Bradley flushed. What do you mean she disabled override? Julio sounded tired. She rewrote the fallback logic. Remember the 2022 audit? She presented it. You were CC'd. Bradley didn't answer. Unless Danielle manually reassigns the token, full lock mode hits at 9:00 a.m. tomorrow, Julio added. For the first time since Friday, Bradley felt real fear. He opened Outlook, scrolling past internal threads, asking if something was broken, then typed, subject urgent, Danielle, please confirm. Did you officially leave the company? We'd appreciate help resolving a few items. He hit send. A few miles away, I was at my kitchen table with a glass of red wine and the last slice of leftover lasagna candle flickering. My laptop pinged. I saw the subject line. Didn't open it. A second ping followed. Subject urgent. Did you leave from Howard, the CEO? 5 words. No greeting, no sign-off. He knew, or was starting to, but I didn't reply. The window had closed. The transfer never happened. The system was holding the line. At exactly 9:00 a.m., it would snap. Thursday, 8:59 a.m., conference room B was tense. People filed in like it was a courtroom. Samantha clutched lukewarm coffee like a shield. Jenna stared straight ahead, jaw tight. Greg from finance had stopped trying to make jokes. Bradley sat at the head, navy blazer, shuffling papers. 2 throat clears. Laptop open, pretending busyness might stop the collapse. He was mid-sentence about stabilizing operations when in stormed Howard, the CEO, red-faced and breathing hard like he'd jogged the stairs instead of taking the elevator. No laptop, no coffee, no phone, just a thick blue folder clutched in one hand, white-knuckled. He stopped in the center of the table, glared at no one in particular, and bellowed, "Where is she?" Silence. Bradley half stood. "Mr. Howard, I assume you mean Danielle?" "I'm referring to Danielle," Howard snapped. "Where is she?" Bradley glanced at Samantha, then back. She was part of restructuring. We've redistributed her tasks. Howard slammed the folder onto the table. The top page slid free, stamped in red, Notice of Federal Contract Suspension. System integrity unverified. Jenna gasped. Samantha dropped her coffee. Howard's voice dropped to razor-edge calm. You restructured the only person certified to maintain our compliance system. The one who personally built the patch that kept our $240 million in contracts alive. Bradley fumbled. We assumed the system had transitioned. Assumed? Howard's voice rose. Do you assume your parachute works before you jump out of the plane? The room froze. Greg from finance muttered under his breath. Jesus. Howard pointed at the second page. Effective immediately, all federal transactions are frozen. All workflows red flagged. We are under preliminary investigation for failing custodial oversight under Federal Statute 932. Samantha looked ready to cry. Jenna looked ready to run. Bradley reached for his laptop. We can fix this. We'll have Danielle reauthorize access. She's under no obligation. Howard cut in. You fired her. You revoked her clearance. You removed the signature without a replacement. She followed protocol. You didn't. A voice at the far end asked quietly. Wait. She was the custodian of record, Howard barked. Of course she was. Why do you think she had higher clearance than me on Vault 41? She was handpicked to hold that system together after the vendor collapse. She was the keystone. Bradley sank into his chair, the buzzwords gone. I didn't know. Howard didn't look at him. You didn't ask. Then he turned and left, the silence closing in like the oxygen had been sucked out of the room. At home, I sat in my kitchen hoodie on coffee cooling. The news murmured in the background. My inbox was empty until my phone lit with a text from an unknown number. Please just tell me how to stop this. I didn't respond. By now they weren't asking for help, they were asking for a miracle. And miracles weren't in my job description. That afternoon's boardroom felt less like a meeting and more like a funeral. Bradley sat far from the head of the table, collar open, eyes darting like a trapped animal. The legal team huddled in silence, laptops open but idle. Compliance had printed every page of the suspension notice, laying them out like evidence. Howard stood at the head, hands, flat face drained. When he spoke, his voice was low but sharp. Bradley, do you even know what her job was? Bradley blinked, opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. She managed reporting internal workflows documentation. No, Howard said, shaking his head. She was the only federally certified custodian for our compliance infrastructure. The only one. You didn't just fire an employee, you erased our legal right to operate. Someone in legal whispered, Jesus Christ. Howard's voice hardened. Danielle was vetted by the Office of Contractual Integrity. She passed Level 3 clearance when our vendor collapsed, and no third party could take over the system. I watched her rebuild the compliance bridge from scratch using obsolete infrastructure no one else would touch. Do you know why we never replaced her? Bradley looked up slowly. Because you couldn't. Howard slammed a manila folder down my clearance profile, sealed with a federal stamp. It wasn't just an HR file, it was a security contract. And Bradley had signed the offboarding form like he was tossing out expired toner. He stared at the document like it might bite him. He looked smaller somehow. I didn't know, he whispered. That's the problem, Howard shot back. You didn't know. You didn't ask. You assumed she was just another quiet worker pushing buttons while you strutted around talking about streamlining. Bradley tried to rally. We can fix this. Call her offer reinstatement, it's already been reported, Claire from legal snapped. Her custodian role was marked vacated and confirmed by the Federal Compliance Office at 4:36 p.m. Tuesday. She filed it clean by the book. No backup custodian. Mark, the CTO, finally spoke. The system read her departure as abandonment. Audit lock is automated. Vault 41 started the countdown the moment her token was revoked. Howard's voice dropped. So we're done. Unless she returns voluntarily and signs a new custodial agreement. Yes, Claire said. Push a reinstatement form, Bradley asked, voice cracking. It won't matter, Mark said. She built biometric tie-ins, facial signature, keystroke behavior. The system knows it's her. You can't fake that. Howard rubbed his face. Do we have a number? She's ignored 3 calls, 3 emails, and a courier, Claire said flatly. Howard nodded once, slowly. I gave you the keys to something you didn't understand. Instead of learning what it was, you set it on fire? Bradley looked at his hands. I thought she wasn't visible. I didn't think she mattered. Howard's voice closed like a door. Sometimes the quiet ones are the only thing holding the roof up. No one spoke after that. At home, I was reading a paperback thriller, not a manual, or a doc, enjoying a morning without acronyms. My phone buzzed with a voicemail from an unknown number. I didn't listen. My job was done. Nothing Bradley the board or even Howard could do would stop what was coming. The contract was void. The clock had run out. Thursday, 9:30 a.m. sharp. No alarms, no countdowns. Just a single line of red text blinking on every monitor across 3 floors. Authorization lock. Custodian role vacated. All contract-related systems suspended per federal protocol. $240 million in active government contracts flatlined. Finance terminals froze mid-upload. Procurement dashboards grayed out. The audit console showed nothing but that red line like a death certificate in code. Charlotte in payroll tried to push a release compliance chain invalid. Bradley was nowhere. In the war room, Howard Legal, the CTO, and 3 red-eyed execs stared at the big screen. The weight of it landed like a body. Emails rolled in from the Department of Defense Administrative, hold pending custodial reassessment. From the Federal Office of Logistics, third-party eligibility review initiated. Cease all work immediately. Even janitorial contracts tripped flags. Howard leaned toward Claire. Do we have a shot at getting her back? She's under no obligation, Claire said. The moment we off-boarded her, she became a civilian. And to the feds, she's still our compliance officer of record with no replacement. At 9:07 a.m., Samantha left her desk and stood in the hallway. No tears, no yelling, just staring at the floor like it might give her answers. It pulled logs. Finance drafted loss estimates. PR tweeted scheduled maintenance no one believed. Howard just stared at that blinking banner, at the ghost of the person he'd trusted, the one he should never have let Bradley touch. Across town, in a quiet Houston cafe with black tile floors and too many Edison bulbs, I sat near the window, coffee cooling. My phone buzzed once, unknown number, no message. Then again. Then a third time. I didn't check. I already knew why they were calling. Not respect. Not regret. Just fear. Fear of the systems I'd held together and the silence I'd left behind. I picked up the phone. Let it vibrate a second longer, then held the power button until the screen went black. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't bitterness. It was closure. I didn't burn the bridge. I just let them walk off it and watched from a distance as the structure they thought didn't need me collapsed under its own arrogance.